For the first time in 5 years, the Victory Bell has come home to Durham. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast. I'm your host, Brian Kennedy, and as always, joined with my co-host, Josh Cox, Scott Medlin, and Jamie Holt. Hey, I got it right, finally. And as I stated, the Blue Devils finally did it. 6 years in the making. It finally happened. The Bell is back in Durham. We've got a lot of thoughts on our minds, but before we give our thoughts, you got to hear from the man himself. As always, here's Manny Diaz post-game after the comeback victory.
Good to see everybody. Actually, before I begin, I just want to make a comment about the hurricane that went through and what that's done to the western part of the state, and just that everybody associated with Duke football, that our thoughts are with the people who just have gone through some devastating damage. And if any way, shape, or form what happened here tonight could have been some sort of distraction for what they've had to go through, then that's part of another part of the victory we had here tonight. As for the game itself, I'm in awe of our guys. Couldn't be more proud of what we did. We talked about it at halftime, that we had a chance to do something legendary, and that would require all of our belief in ourselves and in each other. And the way that Carolina was defending us, they were making us go the long way. They had really changed their cover structure to eliminate one-on-ones down the field and grind it out. And we challenged our offensive line and our defensive line at halftime to take over the game. And I thought without a shadow of a doubt, that's exactly what happened. And I thought we dominated the line of scrimmage in the second half. To get Star Thomas going is really what got our offense going. Defense, really, we had the one unfortunate situation when we blocked the punt, which ended up being 3 points for them. From that point on, they didn't score again. And defense, we had to play most of the half with very little margin for error. They were just phenomenal. That back's a real guy. So that's an NFL guy, a threat to go at any time. And I do think we made him earn the majority of his yards. So that's a locker room right now that's really, really excited, really, really happy, but also knows that this night is not what the season's all about, that there's more we can do. And starting the season 5-0, they really believe that. We got a tough one next week, but we will enjoy the heck out of this one tonight, and we go again tomorrow.
And again, that was head coach Manny Diaz giving his thoughts after the 21-20 victory over Chapel Hill College. Fellas, it was the closest margin of victory against UNC since 2016 when Duke won 28-27. We have a packed episode, but we as Duke fans, we've got to give our comments. And we're going to give those comments after we pay the bills. The lights almost got cut off on us. Josh, thanks for the reminder. First, we got to thank Matt Bliven. Matt has been our ticket giveaway sponsor. He was actually at the game, at the tailgate. Shout out everyone that came to the B3 tailgate. That will continue for the remaining 3 games this season. But Matt's always been a Durham native. He's a Duke fan, and he is willing to answer any question you might have when it comes to the real estate market and current trends. If you're looking to buy, sell, invest, or build in the triangle, give Matt a call. His number is 919-323-0527, or you can email him at mlb@nestrealty.com. And the next ticket giveaway will, of course, let me get under that, will, of course, be for the upcoming Florida State game in 3 weeks. Josh, we got 2 more home sponsors to thank. Who we got?
Yes, sir. Well, our next sponsor is Hometown Air. They will take care of all of your HVAC needs, residential side. They bring 25 years of experience into the HVAC world. And so they are providing service contracts to residential customers. This will keep your system running in peak form no matter what time of year. It's good to have that peace of mind knowing that you're going to stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer. So these regular maintenance is important to extend the life of your system and to ensure that they run efficiently. You can call them today, reach out, let them know you would like to sign up for a service contract. If you mention the Section 17 podcast, they'll give you $17 off your first year. That's a pretty good deal. And so go to Hometown Air right now. You can go to hometownairnc.com, hometownairnc.com, or call them at 919-568-3212. So we appreciate our friends there at Hometown Air. And then our final Hellraiser sponsor, by the way, shout out to the Hellraiser. Final Hellraiser sponsor, our friends from Home Field Apparel. You're going to hear a little bit more as you see Brian showing off the Home Field Apparel Duke blah, blah, blah hat that we're giving away later on in this episode. But homefieldapparel.com, it is your go-to place for vintage gear. Comfortable, stylish. There's some new bomber jackets, it looks like, that are coming out recently. They teased them to some of us partners over the last few days. If you use code section 17 at checkout, you'll receive 15% off your first order. That is at homefieldapparel.com, the leader in vintage branding. Brian, we have kept the lights on. They're on.
Good. This would be the one episode we do not want the lights to be shut out on. And as I say, we've got a packed episode. We've got an interview with Mark Packer. We've got the mailbag. We've got This Week in Blue Devil History. We've got Tale of the Tape. And, of course, the predictions. But before we get to all of that, we have to take off our media cap and put on our fan cap. Fellas, this has been a while. We've all been wanting this game. The last 2 years have just been heartbreaks. So before we get into anything else, give your personal thoughts on this past Saturday's big win to where Duke finally got the bell back. Who wants to go first?
I'm not going to lie to you. I thought Muffy and Buffy, the other 13 fans from Chapel Hill College that were there, were going to go home in their Mercedes really happy. But unfortunately, their Mercedes didn't start because they left the keys in the ignition and didn't finish the drive. Honestly, great job by the Blue Devils. Crowd, we're getting this 1 point down the road. You did a great job of showing up. Now put your butts back in the seat for Florida State on the Friday night, because we should fill this joint out every week. These kids deserve it. And, hey, we get to ring-a-ling-ding, that ding, ding, ding. Hallelujah, amen.
Yeah, I mean, Saturday was great. I mean, it started with the tailgate. We were there bright and early, 8 o'clock in the morning. That's a little too bright and early for me, but that is what it is. The game itself, it started a little rough, and I'm not gonna lie. I was sitting there, me and Scott were sitting there, and I was like, Scott, it's 20-0. If they score again, I was like, I think I'm gonna go to my truck and just find a game on Sirius Radio and listen to it. Other than sit here and watch this, but to Duke's credit, they came back, got the bell. Like Scott said, the crowd was fantastic. There was a few people that left at halftime and didn't come back, but I mean, for the most part, people stayed, and it was an announced sellout, and it was the crowd. I mean, it was packed, because even, a lot of times you look over in the horseshoe, the open end of the horseshoe there, and you see in those corners those sections a lot of times are kind of empty, but they were even pretty full for this game. So it was definitely a packed house. It was a great night. Lost my voice; it was already mostly gone from being sick. But what a night!
Yeah, for me, this thing started, as Jamie mentioned, in the tailgate. We've already mentioned the tailgate a couple of different times, but man, we were able to move up to the B3 lot for tailgating, and we combined forces, obviously with the Hard Hat guys, which we always do, but with Rocket Man, with Bayou Blue Devil, with Rigsby's, with a few others that kind of latched on there, and we're trying to create like Tent City out there. And so if you're listening to this, you have a B lot pass, come add on to the tailgate. Why not, right? And so we had some really good Cajun food. We took a picture of everybody at the tailgate, but that didn't do it justice. There were probably double the amount of people there, between 11 a.m. and 3 o'clock or whatever. So shout out to that. And then as far as the game goes, I've never experienced a game where Duke has looked so terribly bad in the first half, and then I know we're going to get into it, but they didn't get the kickoff. And Carolina, we get the freakiest weird play in football that I've seen in a long time, where you actually block a punt and you don't regain possession and they get a first down. So whatever. And then they held the ball. What was it, guys, for like 8 minutes to start the first half? Second half. And then Duke just turned it on. And I've never seen anything like it. So, I mean, I am pumped. I hugged President Vincent Price on the field. He was celebrating, and I was standing right beside him, and he turns around and looks at me, and I said, "What's up, Prez? Congratulations!" And he gave me a big old hug. So, my night was made. Brian, what were your thoughts, man?
So I'm going to tell you guys something. I don't think you heard me say this. I said it to a few people in the tailgate. My stomach was in knots the entire day. And it's typically not like that for a Duke football game. But as a fan, again, we've got our fan hats on right now. This is a game that we wanted for so long. And I don't think if the last 2 years turned out the way they did, it would have been like that. Like, it wasn't just me. There were other fans at the tailgate that were like, I don't want to eat. I'm just nervous. This should be a game that Duke controls. And then after the first half, everyone was like, oh, God, here we go again. It's going to be like that 38-7 blowout in Keenan a few years ago. I was on the field for the first quarter, and I was on the field for the fourth quarter. I had the wife and kids there. The wife was happy for the first half, don't get me wrong, because she was a UNC fan. But the boys, they were about ready to go. Hudson, my oldest, he was almost in tears. And I was sitting next to him. I said, buddy, what's wrong? Are you, something wrong? He goes, Duke hasn't scored anything. I'm upset. So at least I'm raising him right. But so they left.
Bro, hold on. I feel that. Because about
100%.
about 1990, that was me or whatever year it was.
That was actually me this Saturday potentially.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, I was feeling that.
I told Jamie multiple times at halftime, I was trying to get the stadium official to throw me out for the game. I was having so much of a bad time.
He had this look like he wanted to strangle someone. And he's only 8 years old, folks, so I'm a little concerned about that. At least his fandom was there. But they had to leave. The boys couldn't hang for the whole game. So I decided fourth quarter, if we're close, I'm going to go back down, and I'm going to try to catch the action there. Luckily, fans, I said this, and I'm going to say it again. It was because of you. I truly believe this team willed its way back, because I know we'll talk about it again. The breakdown was probably 70-30 with Duke fans. Had this been any other year, the game would have probably been done by halftime. We've been a part of this football team's history since we can remember. To Josh's point, I don't think I can remember a game that Duke willed its way back down 20-plus points. But anyway, it was so exciting. I'm sure you've seen some of the videos as Todd Polino's running up to the bell. There's some crazy guy yelling at him to ring the bell. Just go ahead and ring it. That was me. So again, Todd, if you're watching, I apologize. I did not mean to sound like the angry father who's upset at his son. It's just, I don't think the team knew what to do. Most of the team just ran to the Carolina sideline. I think they were looking for the bell. That or taunting the fans and the players. But it was just so good to see. Me and Tyler and Laura, we were all in the scrum with the fans that rushed the field. So I got redemption for not storming the field during the Clemson game. But just what a way to cap it off. Duke's 5-0 for the first time to start a season since 94. Manny's only the second head coach in Duke history to start his tenure at Duke 5-0. The other, Fred Goldsmith, in 94. So, we're living on cloud nine, folks. And you've got to appreciate everything that Manny and his staff have done so far.
And poor Mac Brown. I just feel so bad for him. And he's just doing the best he can, guys, at his age. And you have to think about it. The long walk from the visitors' locker room, it's just tough. It's tough for a guy of that age. And so, I'm not gonna say anything more. But I just feel for Mac Brown. Just feel for him.
We'll talk more about, obviously, all things UNC. The majority of this episode is going to be devoted to this game. But like Manny said in his presser, we've got another game coming up against Georgia Tech. We'll talk Yellow Jackets later in the episode. But we had another interview. Fellas, we're 2 for 2 in the last 2 weeks. I unfortunately was able to get on, but Josh and Scott, they took the duties over, and they sat down with ACC Network great Mark Packer. Here's their interview with Mark.
And we're here with special guest, Mark Packer from the ACC Network. You probably thought if I have Scott Medlin and Mark Packer on here, we're going to be talking Giants baseball, but there's really not much to talk about. And so we have brought Packer on to talk a little ACC football. Mark, thanks for coming on with us, man.
Well, first of all, Buster Posey taking over, Scott, should change the entire fortunes of our baseball team. And now that the Braves have kicked Arizona to the curb and hopefully the Dodgers join all of us We can talk Giants baseball, but I know on a Duke podcast, that's the last thing you want me messing around with.
You know, Scott could carry on about a 3-hour conversation with you about
Yes.
it, Packer. I'm telling you, we do have there's several Duke fans that cross over into the San Francisco Giant fanhood. We're not really sure what the connection is there, but Scott interacts with a few of them, and but it is that time of year though, Packer. You've got baseball getting into the playoffs, you've got football's in full swing, and then of course, you know, you've got basketball right around the corner with NBA camp starting today, and then college teams getting ready. So this is a busy season for you, huh?
Yeah, I listen. I love October, and you mentioned hoop season and right around the corner. Next week, we all get busy with ACC basketball media days on both the men's and women's side, which will take up 3 days this year, given the fact we now have 18 teams playing hoops. So we got plenty of time to basketball. But as we know, Duke is a football school sitting there at 5-0. Cooper Flag can wait for a little bit. Let's enjoy the ride, right?
That's right. And speaking of football school, Wallace Wade Stadium was packed out Saturday. An unusual amount of Duke blue in those stands. I don't know the exact. Obviously, there's no way to know the exact ratios there, but I mean, I'm looking at 70% plus. The stadium was Duke blue. Real quick, Packer, I know our guys, we're going to be talking about this on this episode, of course, our reaction, but what were your thoughts on that game, the 21-20 victory that Duke pulled out Saturday?
Well, Duke continues to do stuff that really winning programs do, and that is they don't panic. We've now seen, 3 fourth-quarter comebacks? That's not a coincidence. And to do that now with a new head football coach that's brought in a whole defensive mentality of attack, 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 I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Duke. Now, granted, I'll be the first one to tell you the schedule hasn't been the toughest, but hey, you play who's on the schedule, regardless if it's Murderers Row or Roast Beef A&M. And when you find yourself down in the fourth quarter of games, you don't panic. That's what really well-coached, good football teams, good basketball teams, good whatever do. And so I've now seen this enough from Duke to realize that, you know what, they're going to play for 60 minutes and they're never out of a football game. And, I'm sure that a lot of folks saw that score Saturday against North Carolina, especially after watching what the Heels did the week before, giving up 7,000 points to JMU, and they're sitting there pitching a shutout midway through the third quarter. You're going, what in the world is going on? You're taking on, again, your arch rival. It'd be real easy to panic and go, oh, my God, what's going on here? We haven't scored yet. We can't even get the ball in the third quarter after the bizarre block punt. North Carolina still got the ball. We can't get our hands on it. We haven't scored yet against a team that couldn't tackle me last week. They didn't panic. And to me, that is a sign of a really, really good team and good football program. Certainly well coached. The guys have absolutely bought into what Manny Diaz is selling.
I think the epitome of what you said there about, Manny Diaz and his philosophy, his defensive mindset and all that, was on full display with less than 2 minutes to go when there was the 4th and 1 that I think most head coaches in college football would have probably gone for that on 4th and 1. But I think Coach Diaz has said this defense, we've ridden this defense the entire second half. And, UNC is a little bit different this year. And I feel like their best threat is in the backfield. And then the next 2 best threats are tight ends. So I'm not sure that over-the-top game was there like it has been in the past. And so trusting his defense there. And I think that was an interesting viewpoint that Duke fans got to see with Coach Diaz, right? Like, what is his philosophy going to be at the end of games? And played it conservatively, and it paid off.
Well, there's nothing. Plus, let's be honest, Star Thomas, and that really the whole collection of the backfield is really impressive. And Marion Hampton is a great player. We're going to watch him play on Sundays. But really, when you think about it, the best running back on the football field Saturday belonged to a guy in dark blue. And I thought Star Thomas was out of sight. But I just like the poise that Duke has played with. And listen, it's hard to win games when you're only going to score 21 points. And Duke scored 26 in 3 of the wins. So in this day and age of college football where it's offensive-minded and vertical downfield and first to 40 wins, to consider the fact that Duke's 4 of their 5 wins are by 20, and they won't score 26, 26, 26, 21, tells you how well they're playing on the defensive side. And when you realize what they lost from a really talented group last year, it just goes to show you what a good coaching job's taking place right now in Durham, North Carolina.
Yeah, I believe Duke fans are happy with Coach Diaz for sure. Scott, you want to lead us into some ACC talk, man?
All right. So, looking at the way things have gone so far, in your opinion, Pack, who is the biggest letdown so far in the ACC?
Oh, that's easy. They're on the fast track of being one of the biggest busts in the history of college football if they don't find it in a hurry. And then we got word today that the DJU has got a broken pinky, so he's not going to play against Clemson this week. So Brock Glenn gets the nod. We got a chance to see him play a little bit last week. Of course, we're talking about Florida State. I don't think Florida State's worst enemy, which would probably be Miami, wouldn't have even thought in a million years in the middle of the summer that they would be 1-4 through the month of September. And not only are they 1-4, but just the way they looks like a team that's completely disjointed. I mean, we're sitting here talking about Duke's offense scoring, 26 points in 3 wins and 21 against the Heels on Saturday for all wins. Florida State can't seem to get past 14. Again, they had 16 Saturday and getting blown out by SMU, but 2 was on a safety with a bad punt snap. Offensively, they're a disaster. And so maybe Brock Glenn gives them a jolt of life, but just the body language and the lack of awareness and energy. I mean, we kind of saw it in the first game with Georgia Tech. I'm hard pressed to believe that we would ever think that Florida State would be 1-4 going into the month of October. There's no way in the world you could have sold that to me at any point in time during the offseason.
That's a good point. And just kind of staying with that then, who's been the biggest surprise? Obviously, Florida State, hands down, biggest disappointment. Who's been the biggest surprise in the ACC for you so far, 5 weeks in?
I'm not sure it's a team. I think it's a combination of different things. I've been impressed with the way Miami has handled going on the road at Florida, going on the road against an in-state rival in South Florida. Certainly caught a break in the Virginia Tech game. We have seen Miami kind of give you highs and lows where you think that they're getting ready to turn the corner and then they just roll over and play dead. We have not seen that yet. So that to me is a good sign. I've been impressed. Obviously, Duke being 5-0, I'm not sure folks thought that would be the case. I've been impressed with Boston College. I think Bill O'Brien's done a really nice job. They didn't have Thomas Castellanos over the weekend. They were down 20-7 in the fourth quarter. And much like Duke, they played with a lot of poise late in games to find wins. So they've gotten off to a good start. I've been pleasantly surprised, quite frankly, with the newbies in the league. Stanford, people look at that score against Clemson and go, hey, they got blown out. If you watch the game, they really didn't. They moved up and down the field. They just blew up inside the red zone. Cal's gotten off to a great start, winning a game at Auburn. They've only lost one. They're hosting College Game Day. SMU, needless to say, is in a great spot. They go to Louisville this weekend. And if they win that game, look at their schedule. It's not crazy to think they could very well be in the ACC championship game. They're not going to see Miami. They're not going to see Clemson. Their schedule is really conducive. So, Pitt having an offense, Clemson having an offense. I think there's a lot of interesting positives about the league so far through the month of September.
Well, look, thinking about Duke right now, what is their floor and their ceiling, in your opinion? And let me ask this question to follow up on it just real fast. Throw them out there. How good do you think Duke actually is?
You know what? I don't know. And I guess that's okay to say after 5 weeks. I mean, everybody always has an opinion, then you change it after you watch another game. The schedule has been conducive for a good start. But like I said, the thing that's impressed me the most is how they have won when things have gone wrong. I thought that Manny Diaz had a great quote that I heard today that we used on the show. He talked about the adversity of success. And I thought it was a fascinating angle because you know what? There's a lot of folks that all of a sudden good things happen to them and they don't know how to handle it, right? All of a sudden you wish, oh man, only if we could start off 5-0. Well, guess what? Now you are 5-0. How are you going to handle it? People are going to talk about, man, you should be ranked. None of that stuff matters. What matters is playing well against Georgia Tech this week on the road. They're going to have 2 weeks to get ready for you. They're a dangerous team. I think it's a fascinating matchup, but I don't know the answer to that yet. And I think when the schedule picks up, we'll find out a little bit more. I need to see, I think, a little bit more offensive aggressiveness from this team. I mean, it's hard to beat people if you're going to score in the 20s, no matter how good your defense is or your scheme. I think the upside for Duke, quite frankly, is obviously getting back to a bowl, which obviously looks good. And when you're sitting there with 5 wins in your back pocket before you get to October, I don't feel like they're an ACC championship caliber team. And when I watch Miami, I watch Clemson. Duke doesn't look like that to the eye. But again, that's why we play games. That's why we keep score. So I think if you're a Duke fan, you're cautiously optimistic that you can stay relatively healthy and that you found yourself in a coach in Manny Diaz who's been given another chance, who's absolutely making the most of it. I've been very, very impressed with the way they've coached. They've done a really, really nice job.
When if you look at Duke's schedule after this week in Georgia Tech to get their first bye, then you have Florida State and SMU and Durham. Then they go down to the U. So you talk about 3 weeks where you really don't know after you get that bye on what you're going to get.
I would say that based on 5 weeks, I don't like Florida State beating anybody based on what I've seen. Now, maybe again with DJU's injury, maybe they find a spark offensively. But if you can't score, man, you're in no man's land in college football. Now, those other games are certainly a bigger test in terms of the physicality, the quality of talent, and everything else. But man, I remember last year. Again, I know last year. That Duke team after week 1, when they physically manhandled Clemson, and when you sat there and you watched the game, you're like, well, quite frankly, if you didn't know any better, you'd think the guys in blue and white were just as talented, if not more so, quicker, bigger, faster than the guys in orange. And they've won 2 national championships in recent memory. So, it's the beauty of college football, man. On a given Saturday, I say it all the time, the more you read, the more you study, the dumber you get on Saturday watching these games. So if you're Duke, hey, you go about your business, you see what you get on the road. And again, if things go haywire, they're not going to panic. And to me, that's always a good sign of a good team.
Well, one of the things about Duke and Florida State is Duke is 0 for against Florida State in football. So this would be obviously the perfect year as a Duke fan and this Duke team to win and get that 1 in the column to get that ball rolling for the future.
Well, like this weekend, I think I said today, Pitt's going to Chapel Hill this weekend. And with all their success, even winning an ACC championship a couple of years ago, they've never won in Chapel Hill. So as a Clemson alum, I thought in my lifetime, I'm going to be 62 years old in October. I thought I'd never see Clemson beat North Carolina in basketball in Chapel Hill. And if I'm not mistaken, Brad Brunell's 2-1 the last 3 times he's been there. So all those streaks eventually come to an end if you put a good quality product on the field or on the court.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly looking ahead this weekend. Duke travels to Atlanta, 8 p.m. Kickoff. Obviously, Brent Key has done a great job with Georgia Tech. You've got some storylines here. You got Tyler Santucci, the defensive coordinator from Duke, is their defensive coordinator now. Another Jess Simpson, another guy from Duke staff, is back down there at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is the most complete football team that Duke will have faced so far. Very good defense and a solid quarterback in Haynes King. So what are your initial thoughts as you look at this matchup? Where do you see the matchup heading? And then probably at the end there, we'll ask you for maybe a prediction.
Well, I think that it's good on good. Haynes King and that running game are really terrific. They've got terrific weapons on the perimeter. So I love the way Manny Diaz has coached up the defense. No surprise, given his background and pedigree. He had that kind of team at Miami. He saw that when he was a DC at Penn State. So, defense was going to be a strength. Georgia Tech's a dangerous team. I think they're probably coming off a game against Louisville 2 weeks ago that they really thought that, it kind of gave that thing away. Kind of sloppy for them. But they rely on that bread and butter, being able to line up and physically move you out of the way. So as a fan sitting there watching the game Saturday coming up on primetime on ACC Network, to me, the good on good is going to be Georgia Tech with the football against the Duke defense that wants to come after you. And there will be really good challenges on the perimeter and up front, just trying to physically move somebody out of the way. I think that'll be the most interesting matchup of the whole weekend.
It's been interesting to see when Coach Diaz came to Durham, not even a year ago, and talking about, hey, we're going to be in the backfield. We're going to be the tackles for loss team. We're going to be the sacks team. And, you hear, every coach, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, every coach wants to have a good defense, and then you've seen in at least the first 5 weeks, leading the country in tackles for loss. I believe we still might be. I'm not exactly sure. I know we were before the UNC game. It's been interesting to see legitimately in the first 5 games, we're seeing Manny Diaz's defense performing at that level, even nationally and definitely in the league compared to the other defenses. And so it's going to be interesting because Tyler Santucci put together an equally good defense last year at Duke. And so that's going to really be, I would probably take the under in this game if I'm thinking about it.
Well, I think the way Duke has won 4 of their 5 games scoring 26 or less, I would probably agree with that. But you know what? Every time I think we're going to get a low-scoring game, it's 45-42. Like I said, as I say all the time, the more you read, the more you study, the dumber you get. But I'm curious to see what Georgia Tech does coming off that loss to Louisville. Like I said, that to me felt like one of those games they looked at it and said, man, woulda, coulda, shoulda. It's much like what Louisville just did with Notre Dame, where they just got, the 3 turnovers led to 10 points. And they're going to look back at that going, you know what? I thought we were a better team than those guys. Georgia Tech probably felt the same thing looking at Louisville. So it's the thing that we love about college football. It's the thing that we love about sports, that sometimes you just don't know how those matchups are going to work out. But if you're Duke and you're kind of playing with house money a little bit, I mean, nobody's still taking you seriously as far as the voting and all that stuff. The only way you change that narrative is to keep on winning. And that's the one thing that Manny's been able to instill with these guys right from the get-go. And when you consider what the roster looked like when he was announced as head coach, not in a million years, you'd say, well, you know what, there's a lot of rebuilding going to happen. Elko, did a nice job without question. He's now gone. But look at the mass defection, especially on that defensive side. To watch the way Duke's playing through the month of September, really a masterful job by Manny. Really great.
Sure. Well, Packer, we appreciate you being on. If you are watching or listening to this show and for some odd reason don't know Mark Packer, Mark, tell them a little bit about where they can find you, what your shows are throughout the week, and social media and whatnot.
Well, again, you can find us on ACC Network Monday through Friday daily from 4 to 7 p.m. We talk about everybody in the league. I mean, so we try to spread the wealth with those 3 hours with everybody that's doing their thing, whether it be a football deal, basketball, whatever the case may be. We cover the ACC nonstop. So it's Monday through Friday, 4 to 7. You can find me on Twitter or X or whatever they call it now, at Mark Packer. And again, I'm probably the easiest man in the world to reach if you need to find me.
Yeah, awesome. Scott's an old school Mark Packer guy, prime time with the Pac-Man back in the day, all that good stuff. And so a legend in ACC sports, right, Scott?
Oh, definitely. And just so everybody understands, in Buster, we trust.
That's it. Get ready. It's a whole new era in San Francisco. Now we kicked the A's out of the Bay. We own that place. We got Buster running the show. Now, again, in October, America roots against the Dodgers. That's how it works.
Amen. Hallelujah. Pastor Packer right there. Amen, brother.
That's right. Boys. Well, Mark Packer, thanks for coming on the 617 podcast.
You got it, guys. Keep up the good work.
And our thanks again to Mark Packer for coming on this season. He was on last season to talk all things Duke. Sprinkled in a little bit of his thoughts on the ACC as a whole as well. Mark, we appreciate you coming on. We know you have a busy schedule on a Monday. But yeah, another interview. We're going to have another one next week, even with the bye week. We're still trying to work out the details on that. But as we stated last week, we're going to try to have an interview for you guys each and every week leading up to the end of the season. So before we get to the mailbag, I think it's time, fellas. You think it's time? I think it's time.
We already got it up on the screen, baby.
Yeah, we got to give this bad boy away. We still haven't figured out the sport. Jamie, what'd you say it was? I said it was badminton. What'd you say it was? Field hockey?
Field hockey, I think. Field hockey. Yeah.
Scott, Josh, you have any ideas what sport this is?
Maybe lacrosse.
Yeah,
I see the lacrosse net there.
Whatever team it is, they brought in some guy named Cooper Flagg this year. Like he's supposed to be really good or something. He's supposed to be really good at whatever sport that is.
Scott, that looks like a wicker basket, but do you know what sport it might be?
Some kind of round ball and a tiny net, maybe. I'm not sure though.
Well, maybe Duke will give us more information as far as what this team is. But we got a hat to give away. Thank you to each and every one of you who commented on your favorite memory from Victory Bell history with Duke and UNC football. We have 27 entrants overall, and I'm going to pull up the wheel really quick. Let me share my screen. Modern technology, you got to love it. Bam. Can y'all see it? Are we good? All right, fantastic. So as you can see, we have all 27 names. I've got your username from YouTube, Whoever wins, I will reach out to you and we will get you your hat as soon as possible. Before I spin, in all fairness, I'm just going to shuffle these names really quick. UNC. And no, Gary Farrell did not enter, folks, so he will not be winning a hat tonight. He has won our last 2 giveaways. So here we go. Good luck to all 27 of you for this hat. Spinning, it's spinning, it's spinning, and so right at the end, Gray 1, Kenobi 19. Congratulations, you have won the Home Field Duke Sports hat. We don't know exactly what it is, but we'll figure it out. But I will reach out to you personally myself to get all your details. Thanks to each and every one of you who did enter. We will have the ticket giveaway in a couple weeks. There will be another home field giveaway before the season ends. Just trying to figure out when that week will be. Well, let's get into it. Another hefty mailbag edition. Thanks to each and every one of you who sent in your questions. It's not like anything really happened this past weekend, so I don't know what we're going to be talking about. But, Jamie, go ahead and get us rolling.
All right. Dang, I'm still struggling.
Great start.
All right. I'm starting with Matt Bliven, and not because he's our sponsor, but because this is a great question. And I actually think this one might get like Scott off the hinges, like first thing, possibly. So Matt says, what flavor pudding cup do you think Mac had at halftime? Do you think the longer walk to and from the locker room got him? Did UNC make a mistake by not bringing him a wheelchair for said to and from the locker room?
Well, I'm going to go butterscotch for the flavor of pudding. I mean, that's just it was between butterscotch and tapioca for his age bracket, and I'm going butterscotch.
I was going to say chocolate. You see the chocolate pudding. I shouldn't do that reference. Never mind.
Is that,
oh,
Stay away from that one a little bit there, big guy.
yeah. Sorry. There was this line, and I'm like 10 feet over it, so I'm going to back off. I'm going to mute myself. Sorry.
okay, some people may not get it, and that's probably best.
That's perfectly fine, but I know there's going to be some be like, I can't believe you said that.
Yep.
So
Brian's going to get canceled.
Honestly, for someone who I'm not a drinker. I've never drank. I never do. But I would like to offer up a toast to one Mac Brown and a little pudding right here. Thank you, Mac, for the big W, buddy. Appreciate it, man. I got to eat your pudding cup instead of you eating it at the end of the game. I got to enjoy it, you big sucker. Ha, freaking ha.
Is that what flavor is that, Scott?
It is vanilla.
That's good. Vanilla.
It's an old man flavor. Butterscotch would have worked, but I prefer vanilla. Butterscotch is not. I'm not that old yet, so I had to stay with the younger man's pudding of vanilla. So, Mac Brown, thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
I won't be honest. Pudding is another thing that I kind of hate. So,
really quick, Jamie. I talked with the Pop-Tarts representatives this past weekend. They were at the game. They didn't have any Pop-Tarts for me. I legit said, y'all got any Pop-Tarts for us? Nothing. I was very disappointed. However, they did say they were impressed with how Duke performed so far before that game. So, never know, folks. We could be in Orlando later this year.
All right. So, next up, this is not really a question, but I thought it struck me as funny. At D Spurlock 3, Duke's big deck rocks UNC in the second half. So I thought I had to just throw that out there. This next question speaks to what we were talking about Wallace Wade.
Hey, Jamie, can I interrupt?
Mm-hmm.
That just reminds me to shout out the Duke social media team, bro.
Dude,
I mean, it was epic. The troll jobs were just the Instagram where they reported the UNC official account and they said they were impersonating a good football team. It was pretty funny. Who they were pretending to be or whatever. You had the deck one. I mean, what was the other? There was at least one more.
Your deck, the one she told you not to worry about.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, it's just so good. Good. So shout out to Brent and the team. Friend of the pod.
I'm glad you actually mentioned that because I meant to put I meant to put shout out the Duke social team in my notes here, and I forgot. So I'm glad you mentioned
Well, it's
that.
your age. I mean, we've already
Yeah.
established, 8 o'clock's too early. You need to sleep in. We got pudding, all this good stuff. So just adds to it.
All right. And next up, this is what we were talking about a little earlier with Wallace Wade. It says at hey wait what huh? How loud and insane did the Wallace Wade crowd get when we took the lead? And it was crazy in there. I mean, it when Peyton ran that touchdown in it. I mean, we went wild. We went crazy.
I would put that at or above slightly the 2012 catch by Jamison Crowder. It was that. And I will say, again, with the 70-30 split, I'm going to put it a little bit above because 2012, that game was half and half when it came to the fans. That was I've never heard it that loud. And Kate Rogerson of ABC 11, she was standing next to me, and she made a good point, and I've never thought about this. She goes, I go to all these games all around the country, State, UNC, Wake. She goes, I've never seen a stadium like Wallace Wade that can be dead 1 minute and loud as can be the next minute. She goes, that just is something that I've just noticed with this fan base is that, well, except when the team's on offense and the sign has to be put on the scoreboard, just throwing that out there. So yeah, that was a loud cheer when Peyton got into the end zone to take the lead. It was even louder when Trey Freeman had that interception.
I was going to say, Coach Patkey, I asked him about that today at the press conference. He said that the guys on the field said that was the loudest they think they've ever heard it. At times, they couldn't even hear themselves on the field. So that tells you what the crowd did. And again, I go back to what I said about 10 minutes ago. We should have that kind of advantage for every home game, not just Chapel Hill College.
And
Well, I will say,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jamie. I'm just saying if you were at that game and you stayed through the entire game, there's no way you could walk away and not be like, man, that's a great place to watch a football game. I mean, everything, the Devil's Deck, the concourse area, how clean it is. And just to think the previous night, 17,000 plus were in there for the Ed Sheeran concert. Shout out to the university athletic department and all the vendors who got that place ready for Saturday. Duke grounds crew for like that field looking just immaculate for Ian and his team and all they do. But I mean, it was incredible, man. Like Wallace Wade was like, it had like Cameron vibes for those moments. And like, you really see that, there's passion there. And, like Scott said, it'd be nice to see that passion at other games. And I'm sure we're going to catch a little bit of it with the Florida State matchup and potentially with Virginia Tech. And I get that. But yeah, fans, like, thanks for showing up, number one. And then number two, do your best to get out there to other games and let's let these guys know that that the fan base is behind them and that they're supported. I think that's major and that's key.
Man, when you look at Wallace Wade, especially when you look at that shitty stadium 8 miles down the road, you're walking on the concourse. You don't have to worry about potentially breaking your ankle because there's like a crater like right in the middle of the concourse or, whatever. You can.
Yeah, our craters are just in the media parking lots.
Yeah, exactly. You can, the video board, you can see it. Our video board's big. Our deck is huge.
Massive.
It's massive.
And white.
Especially compared to the little Smurf one they have over 8 miles away.
I mean, the tiny deck, and then ours is just massive, huge, big. Wallace Wade is just so much better.
Speaking of Wallace Wade, and speaking of Brian, you mentioned our friend of the pod, Kate Rogerson down there. Kate came over and hung with me right after that, and it's really funny. I was talking to her about it a little bit, and then kind of watching. Like it's really funny to watch media members. They're not supposed to react to anything going on the field, and when a couple of those plays happened in the fourth quarter, I mean, there were some of the highest level donors that no one wouldn't know who they are. Just the casual fan, you would not know who they were. and they were flipping their lids on that sideline. I'm talking about going absolutely berserk. And Kate is doing her best to not show any emotion and like just a grin on her face and all this. But I think it's really cool to see that because, you know, in those heat of the moment, man, it's really cool. And I would say this, even if you're not like an actual Duke fan, just the spirit of the stadium and the fans in that moment, it's really hard to not sit back and enjoy yourself unless, of course, you're a Carolina Tar Heel fan. But if you were there kind of neutral, I mean, you couldn't help yourself but enjoy that fourth quarter.
In all seriousness, too, like when, like Scott said, I believe, when Wallace Wade is packed out like that, and it's mostly Duke fans. We talked about that before. It was mostly Duke fans. There wasn't nearly as many Carolina fans as there was 2 years ago when they first came over when Elko first was coach. When it's packed like that, Wallace Wade doesn't get enough credit for how loud it can be. I mean, it can be a very loud stadium.
And remember, the team removed 5,000 seats, and it was just as loud, if not louder, than it was when you had 40,000 seats. Just something to consider.
All right, next up, Bentley Weeks says, "What a win!" And he wants to know, where does this rank as far as all-time Duke and UNC football games? That's a great question.
Yeah, so incredible win. I mean, you have to think the two. I don't know. There's been so many good games, but really, I mean, I think of 2012 and '89 as the two headliners, and that doesn't take anything away from the was it Brian Fields interception, the 2-hand pass. So I don't know. I mean, it was as good as any of those, and I don't know where to rank them, guys. Where do you rank it, Scott?
I would say it's the second best home Carolina win of all time. I'm not gonna lie to you. That 89, man. Spurrier's got I mean, that's just beautiful. I don't know how you top that, but 2012 was great just because of the fact that there was so many Carolina fans there, and they all thought they were going home happy. And then Jamison Crowder decided he was going to catch the football, and he was going to hold on to that thing for the rest of his life, it seemed like. And I think that may be the number one all time. But honestly, this is a great thing to look back to 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Because if you think about it, you're talking about students, and, you know, Coach Diaz kind of mentioned this today. You're talking about students. This is their first big game experience, the freshmen, players, students, the whole nine. 10 years from now, that may be their best favorite game of all time because one, they won, two, they came back from 20 down, and three, it was against the arch rival. And who doesn't love to see Carolina lose? I mean, give up 71 week, then they have a 20-point lead and lose 21-20. Nothing could be finer than watching Carolina lose.
I think importance factor to the program 2012 is above because that was the first bowl game, the year that they went to the first bowl game since 94. Excitement factor, though, I would have to put this game because, again, if you've been a Duke fan long enough, you realize and understand that pretty much any other year, if Duke was down 20 to UNC at halftime, take it to the house. Not trying to be negative, but it's just how it was. And so for this team to will its way back, to come back, the excitement factor was definitely above 2012 because 2012 was more of a slugfest. It was just punch for punch, back and forth. But man, I mean, this is, we always talk about that other sport up the hill in the old Gothic gym and their rivalry with UNC and how every game, it doesn't matter what the records are, you're going to have a great game. This football rivalry is getting to that point. For the longest of time, it wasn't, well, Duke's 0-6 and UNC's, 5-1. It's going to be a good game. No, we knew the outcome more than likely of what would happen. I would say these last, and help me out here, fellas, I would say since 2012, other than maybe one or two games, it has been like that. You don't know who's going to win. Regardless of the records, it's going to be a good game. And especially these last 3 years, it has come down legit to the final series of the final play of the game. Anyone else?
And I would say, like we've said multiple times, Sam Howell and Drake May were not walking through that locker room on Saturday. It was Jacoby Criswell, and unfortunately, he took the first L in 5 years for the Carolina Chapel Hill Tar Heels.
Yeah, and I think I feel the same way. 2012 maybe slightly above this one, but not by much, if any at all. I mean, that a 20-point comeback. I mean, wow. Like Brian said, just a couple of years ago, a 20-point deficit would have turned into like we would have lost 41-6 or something like that. That's what it would have turned into. But now these guys, they don't give up. Like we don't feel like going into the fourth quarter that we're going to lose the game. Like not like there was in the past. It used to be like that. You would go into the fourth quarter and we feel like, this one's not looking too good. Now we go into the fourth quarter, we're feeling like we're the better team. We're gonna pull this out or whatever. Next up, I got at Duke FB coverage. Ben, he said, "Has there ever been anything so beautiful as Peyton Jones' game-winning touchdown?" And not much.
Brian and me and Tyler and Laura were right in that corner, and I got it on my personal phone. I got the whole play, and the place. I was able to pan the crowd as soon as it happened, and it. This is all I can say. It felt like Clemson and Notre Dame. It felt like those two games last season. Just the way the stands were full, the way people were cheering. I know this kind of goes back to it, but it was incredible. And by the way, shout out to Peyton Jones. Shout out to the run game. Shout out to the offensive line. I think there were some schematic changes made at halftime with the offensive line and the blocking. And man, I'm sure we'll get to it, but it was awesome. It was really awesome to see us just absolutely control the trenches in the second half. The offensive line controlled their defensive line, and our defensive line stayed in that backfield.
All right. And we're getting to the running game now, actually. At Squatch Golf, this is maybe not the blowout I was predicting, but somehow this was even better. 20-point comebacks are pretty good. If you're not going to have a blowout like that, winning like that is pretty awesome against your rival. With everything considered of this team's offensive DNA being pass first, which we see Malik chunk the ball around quite a lot. Is this the greatest Duke rushing performance in team history, or one? It's one of. Brewer and Diaz really had to be patient in the second half. And I got your tweet right here, Brian. I don't know if you want to. I'll let you talk through it.
Yeah. Breaking news, because I went off of Duke's media guide from this year. The media guide was wrong. So shout out to SID team. You might want to look into that. I'm not saying that as being funny.
She left and went to Missouri after she made the guide. So I mean, what can we say?
I think that's what she realized, and she took the job and to flee because she knew I would come after her. No, Star Thomas, shout out to him, 166 yards. I found this out today, and shout out Connor O'Neill because he's the one that actually posted this on X, Twitter. Star Thomas had the second highest single rushing total in a game in a win versus Carolina. The first was Jack Alexander, 193 yards in good old 1935, or as we like to say, Peter Dodge's freshman year at then, was it Trinity College? When did they change the Trinity? Trinity Duke.
Sure. I mean, Peter was definitely there when it was Trinity.
Yep, he helped lay the stonework for the stone camo. But I mean, you can't. I look at it this way: if the run game had not been there, this episode would be completely different. I mean, the offense had its faults. The defense, and I'll say this, and I forgot to mention it. This game felt like a game from Mike Elko's first season because we always talked about the first half is good and then the second half is bad, or the first half is bad and the second half is good. It kind of had that feeling, and Duke fans forget that because for the first year, even though Duke went, help me out, fellas, I'm already drawing a blank, 8-4,
Yep.
8-4 in the regular season. There were games to where we as fans were going, are we going to win this game? That was a terrible half. Or, hey, we're up big, and then we let the other team come back. So if it wasn't for Star Thomas, Peyton Jones, it could be a completely different talk that we're having right now. So kudos to Starr. I think he's secured his spot as RB number 1. I don't know. Jaquez is going to be back this week, hopefully, against Georgia Tech, but that's going to make it very interesting for defenses to scheme against the three-headed monster is what we have.
All right. We'll go to Michael Galipo. Kind of, I hope I pronounced his last name right. Not sure. Kind of following up on the running backs more. Do you think we'll see the running back pass featured more? Starr caught 2 for 45 Saturday, and Peyton also had a catch for 13 yards. He says seems like a much better play than our 40-yard deep shots on 3rd and short. And
Well,
sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say on the first drive, if Malik doesn't throw a 6-yard pass on a 7-yard route, I mean, he had nothing but green grass in front of him. He had 2 blockers started. He would have been gone. I mean, Malik, unfortunately, the jitters were there, and you could see it. And it took 2.5 quarters for him finally to get over it. And it seemed like once he finally completed a couple passes, it's like the weight of the world went off his shoulders. But to go back to the question, man, that's there. I would love to see any of the 3 running backs one-on-one on the outside with any DB, any safety, any linebacker. I beg and plead Coach Brewer to do that. These guys have elite speed, and they're very elusive, and I would love to see it happen. Hey, why not start doing it this Saturday night versus Tyler Santucci and the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets?
Yeah, I'd love to see Starr get out into some space with, catching the ball a little bit more because he's got, I mean, like Scott said, he's got that elusive speed. Makes one guy miss and he can take it to the house. Next up, at that dude Deuce. How much credit does David Feely get for the conditioning of this team, especially in the 4th when they get stronger? And then I have another similar shout out, Harlan Neal. He says, big shout out to the strength and conditioning coach, David Feely. Really wore Carolina down in the trenches. He liked the 4th quarter strength and great composure and mental toughness. And there's no one better than David Feely, right?
100%. And we alluded to it, Jamie, I believe you just did earlier. And just like the 4th quarter, like Duke fans can now say over these last 3 years, we're going to be the better team in the 4th quarter. You know what I'm saying? We're going to be stronger in the 4th quarter. We're going to have our wind in the 4th quarter. Like we're not going to be, gasping for air in the 4th quarter. And these guys are well conditioned. David Feely was ready and pumped for this game. He swung by the tailgate on his way in and let us know by screaming out the window of his truck, how excited he was for this game. After the game was over, I always enjoy watching Feely's reactions on social media. But you're absolutely right. This game was won and lost in conditioning. It was won and lost in mentality. And conditioning and mentality are the job of David Feely. And so he does it better than anyone in the ACC. And I would argue he does it better or as good or better than anyone in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that was, and Manny even said it, right? I can't remember where I heard it, but I know he said it. And it was an interview somewhere, may have been at ACC Media Day. That he said he doesn't know that he would be at Duke if David Feely had left. Like, I mean, that was one of the reasons Manny even just took the job, was the fact that David Feely was still here and still in control of the strength and conditioning of this team. All right. At FishFry02 has a couple questions, and we talked about this a little bit, or Brian alluded to it a little bit earlier. Where do we stand with the running back depth chart now? Is Starr now RB1? And in my opinion, over the last few games, I'm not a coach. I can't be the coach. I'm not a coach. But in my opinion, Starr is the number 1 back. Like right now. I mean, unless Jaquez comes in and just like blows up and starts playing like crazy.
Well, we've seen this in years past. You keep riding the hot hand until a defense catches on and finds a way to stop the hot hand. Take them out, insert said running back, see what they do. If that doesn't work, go to option 3. This coaching staff is not going to take out Star Thomas. He has shown that he is an elite running back in this system. It took him a little bit because don't forget, folks, that first game, Star was still trying to figure things out, and we notated that. But now that he's got his feet literally under him, he has shown that he can run with the best of them. And we're going to need his playmaking ability against this tough Georgia Tech defense, which I'll talk about here in a few.
Yeah, and let me just say, we can go back a grand total of 1 year and see this in action. Last season, Jalen Coleman was injured through much of the season. And really, at the beginning of the year, I mean, you would have made a argument that he was RB1, or he could have been. And what ended up happening is you had Jordan Waters take that RB1 role, you had Jacques West take the RB2 role, and Jalen Coleman was really the third option. But what else did you see during the bowl game? And as we got closer to the end of the season, there were some key drives that Jalen Coleman was the running back, and he was the guy, having the important carries. And so, I'm not sure that it matters somewhat, but let's put it this way. You're not going to demote Star Thomas after the last 2 weeks that he's had.
And honestly, I know, and obviously nothing against Jaquez, but our running game was struggling to start the season. But I mean, that wasn't on him. I think that was just, that was a lot of things, all at once causing the running games to struggle. But Star has really caught fire here, the last 3 weeks. So I think you keep on riding that hot hand, like Brian said. JD also says, which victory feels better as a fan, this one or the Clemson win from last year? That was a good question. The Clemson win from last year was huge, but for me, I don't know what you guys say. For me, it's still this one. I mean, getting the victory bell back after 5 years. But then Clemson, it's like, God, that was a top 10 team. Like, it's hard to like.
Can I see you one and raise you one? What if we beat Florida State in 3 weeks? It would be the first time in program history Duke has beaten Florida State. I don't care what the record is. That's meaningful too. I mean, I know we're playing what ifs. All right, turn it back, go back. Give me the bell every time. I think this one was just more significant. I get Clemson. It was a Labor Day. We had the medical room named after Scott. That was a big day too. And it elevated the program. How do I put this though? But I think it also put a certain Midnight Rider on the map too, which is why we're still in a good situation as a program. I don't know. I just Duke UNC will always be for me top when it comes to this program.
All right, I've got the other side. That Clemson game was sick. Like, you have to think, like, the entire offseason. I mean, if you guys can remember, we figured out by looking at the schedule, those bootleg schedule websites, Brian. Yeah, early in the spring, we figured out that our opening week had to be Clemson. And from the beginning, we were like, man, this is going to be wild. We're good. And then we got the news that we were getting the Monday night Labor Day time slot, and we're like, oh, this is going to be insane. The buildup was crazy, and we got on this podcast, over a year ago, and we said we can play with these guys. They are Clemson, but we can play with these guys. And not only did we get out there and play with those guys, but we beat them 28-7. And listen, the field storm was great this past weekend. But do you remember the Clemson game, guys? I mean, there were 3 minutes left in the game, and the students were already on the sidelines. They literally couldn't keep them in the stands. So I'm going to play devil's advocate to that. We've beaten Carolina before. We'll beat them again. And we had beaten Clemson before too, but not in modern history, really. And it was been since 2004 since we had beaten them. And that was just electric. There's no other way of putting it.
But the fact is that we are 3 years removed from being at probably the lowest of lows with this program. Who would have thought 3 years later we're talking about upsetting Clemson, beating North Carolina and getting a victory bell back, potentially going up against an FSU team and beating them for the first time in 30 years. So a lot's happened with this program in the last 3 years. Scott, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I
But he
would.
did.
It's okay. I'm used to it by now. I would actually, yeah, I gotta say the game. Maybe it's because it's the most recent game, but the fact that Duke was down 20-0 early in the third quarter, and then they turned around and they layeth the smacketh down on them, and the fact that Carolina could not do anything, they had nothing go. Even when, and I didn't melt down about this during the game, but even when Jordan Moore got held and almost decapitated 3 straight times and no flag was thrown, and Manny Diaz lost his ever loving mind, then Vincent Anthony in the fourth quarter twice was getting the left side of his body almost ripped off as he was reaching for Criswell. And the referee is just standing there watching it. And still, the second time he actually made the sack. I mean, it was Dwayne Carter-esque in the past, watching him get held like a teenager on their first date. It was crazy. But I got to take this one just because it was rivalry, down 20-0. I mean, the Clemson game was fun, except for the first 90 minutes before the game started. But I got cool that night, and I felt really good afterwards.
All right. At Blade for Duke, 5 games in, who are your offensive and defensive MVPs? Good question. Good question.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay. Man, that's a really good question. I'm going to start on the defensive side of the football. Wow.
You want me to take
I saw this question. Well, I want to give a shout out to Wes Williams. And here's why. In this game, and I'm not sure that that's my answer, but in this game specifically, in the third quarter, when UNC drove and they had the ball in the red zone and it was 3rd and 2, it was Wes Williams that stopped Amarian Hampton and made it 4th and 1. UNC was going for it, and then they had a false start or whatever that was. That play saved the game. I was sitting with a friend of mine, shout out Curtin Call, and I said, if we go down 24 instead of 20, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. And so I'm going to say that I'm going to stick with it. Wes Williams on defense, and I'm going to go Star Thomas on offense.
Give me Alex Howard, who has just been a monster. And he went down early in the game, too. I think everyone in that stadium held their collective breath, but luckily he was able to get back in the game late. So Alex Howard has been a standout on defense, as has the whole defense as a core. 25th in the nation, fellas. Who would have thunk it? First year. I mean, we knew Manny was a defensive guru, but still, 25th overall, 18th in the passing game. Kudos, guys. You guys are doing awesome. On offense, I'm hoping he wins Comeback Player of the Year, Eli Pankel. The guy, I mean, we didn't think he would be back after last year. He showed up. He was impressive in camp. He hasn't been injured, thank God. And these first 5 games, he has performed. So, Eli, keep it up, my friend. 7 to 8 more games to go. We want to see you win that Comeback Player of the Year award.
All right. I'll be a little different for his defensive MVP. I'll go actually Terry Moore. I think he's been all over the field this year, the entire year. He's got 2 interceptions. He's wreaked havoc. And so have time to let Scott go here too. I'll be quick on my offensive because I think it's Malik Murphy so far this year. Besides the game Saturday, he didn't have his best game, but he had been completing 65% of his passes. He's up over 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions. So I'll take Malik as the offensive MVP so far.
So I would say if we were just having an independent conversation, I would agree with both of Brian's, but to be different, and that's what I want to be anyway, I say VJ Anthony on defense. He's had a phenomenal year. a local guy. We love him. Shout out to the Anthony family. Offense, this is going to sound crazy. I'm going to say Matt Craycraft and the O-line. I think the O-line, and then that was, shout out to reading our helmet stickers this week. But the O-line plus, now granted, I'm playing with the game here, plus the tight ends, Nicky and Jake Taylor, and Jeremiah when he was healthy, those guys have made the running backs have the holes that they've had to run through. And like coaches mentioned today at the press conference, they had to change their scheme at halftime. They used a different scheme. And honestly, you talk about having a personal protector everywhere Star Thomas went in the second half. Number 81 said, "I will have the hole for you, Mr. Thomas, and I will make you get your first down." And I think that, to me, those guys have been unbelievable. And you can't name all of them. So let's just say the offensive line / the tight ends, just to be different, because
Bruno
that's what we're going to do.
Spina, Caleb Krings, Matt Craycraft, Justin Pickett, Brian Parker.
And that was a
Sorry.
huge
Scott
question
said
mark.
Scott said you can't name all of them, so I just wanted to name all of them.
And that was a huge question mark coming into the season, right? That's what we were all worried about, right? The offensive line. We were all concerned, like, how is this offensive line going to hold up? But they've, so far, through 5 games.
Well, let's be honest, Jamie.
Fantastic.
The first game or two, we were still having questions about it because they were still trying to figure it all out. And then they have.
Right. Timothy Parton. He says resilient is the best word I can think to describe this team right now. He says, when that being said, when are Duke football fans going to realize that this team doesn't roll over? And I think it's just hard for, especially some of the older Duke football fans. It's like, we see it. Because I was close. I swear I really was close to going to my truck and just waiting for y'all to come out after the fact. I'm glad I didn't, obviously. We scored, made it 20-7, and then it felt better. But I think we've seen so many, like, just to put it not so nicely, we've seen a lot of ass whoopings in Wallace Wade in our years, and not ones given out by Duke. But yeah, I think fans are still struggling to figure out that this team, and they just don't have the mentality to give up. And he wants to know about, was there an injury to Jaquez Moore? I really didn't. Did y'all see anything?
So correct me if I'm wrong. He played a series.
Yeah, he
in
got
the
out
first
there.
half.
No, he played one play.
One play, okay.
So he re-injured what he had in a different way, what Coach Diaz said today in the press conference. But he also said that he thought, as of right now, going into this weekend, just if there's any injury questions, that there's a chance that Jaquez plays. There's an outside shot that Nick Morris Jr.'s back. And the only person that looked like a lingering injury was Matt Seiler, number 93, who hurt a knee. He's going to be out a couple weeks. And, Brian mentioned Alex Howard. He said that was a little bit of tightness. And it was great to see him get back on the field, because I told Jamie as soon as he went down. And if you want to talk about the whole gamut of emotions, if there could have been a camera on Jamie and I just sitting there for 3.5 hours, we were up. It was just funny to watch it. And then Jamie, honest to God, he said, if we can get this to 22-7, that this is over. We're going to have a chance to come back and win. We're going to do it. And we did. So shout out to Jamie. I got to give it to him, because he said it. I sat there and listened to him, and I'm like, man, I hope you're right. And we did everything we could to try for a little bit there not to make it happen. But it all worked out in the end, so thank God.
To the point. Good, Jamie.
The Jamie Jinx actually worked
That's
right way for once. Usually it's the reverse Jamie Jinx.
It works. It doesn't work on Sundays. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, to Timothy's point about resiliency, it was something that Mike Elko talked to us about last year privately, guys, and that was, how do we help shift the negativity of this old fan base, right? Like the old guard fan. And that was one thing that Coach Elko identified in his first season. And he wanted to spend, and he did spend the part of the second season really like focusing on the positivity and like. Anyway, Duke fans are going to have to get over the past. I mean, this is 2024. Rosters change like crazy every year. Like cultures change like crazy. Duke's got to maintain a good culture. Duke's got to maintain a good roster. But man, like you can't be like, oh, in the early 2000s. Well, geez, man, like this ain't the early 2000s. So I think we've got to give this program credit over the last 3 years for their resiliency. And if you ever think about giving up on this team, as I mentioned last week, unless they are mathematically eliminated from the game, like all forms of logic. The Louisville game last year. Okay, I understand. Other than that, you can't give up on this team. If there's a logical shot, they're going to get back in it.
And one other point that was made today, kind of at my expense, Malik Murphy is the guy, and nothing's going to change. He is the guy. That's who they're going to, no matter what he does, he is the guy for this Duke University team as the QB1.
All right. Adrian Filson.
He just got married, man. Shout out, Adrian.
Congrats, Adrian.
Yo, Adrian.
He says, so obviously it worked out, but was anyone else thinking UNC was about to go down and kick the game-winning field goal after we punted on 4th and 1? He said if UNC still had Drake May instead of their current quarterback, do you think we were more likely to go for it on that 4th down to try and get that final needed first down? And I think me and Scott in the stands and John Stallings and Evan, Laura's husband, we were all right there, and we were all talking about it. Do you go for it on 4th down? Do you punt the ball? But Manny trusted his defense, right? Manny trusted his defense. That's his defense, and he knew that they could get it done. And shout out to the punter. Y'all tell me his name.
He's getting my
Cade
helmet
Riddleson.
sticker.
Yeah, he dropped it down there inside the 10, and that was all they needed. They were able to come up with the stop they needed.
So after the Peyton Jones touchdown, Duke went up 21-20. I looked at Tyler, and he had a big grin on his face. I said, too much time. Seen this story way too many times in this series. I said, I could see this ending 23-21. I said, I'm not trying to be that guy, but being a part of so many of these games as a fan and seeing it play out, as I go, I'm just holding on to hope that the defense will show up, which they did. And it was great. But at the same time, I think all Duke fans were like, yeah, that's great, we're up, but how much time's left? So going back to that old Duke mentality, this game could hopefully help us get over that hump of we're up, we trust the defense, let's just get another win. But yeah, that was that was tough. If it was like 20 seconds left or something like that, then yeah, no doubts. But how much time was left? It was like
It was 150 or something, or 140.
Yeah, around 2 minutes. Yeah,
we made them burn their timeouts on that drive that we had, and so there were no timeouts remaining. Number one. Number two, Manny's a defense first coach, and he trusted his defense, as you mentioned, Brian. Number three, UNC does not have Drake May or Sam Howell, sure, but I think most importantly, their three biggest offensive threats. One of them is the running back, and the other two are their tight ends. They just don't have the ability to put the ball down the field. They don't have that Josh Downs, the speedy, deep threat guy. What is it? Antoine Williams, was that a guy from last couple of years? Tez Walker. They don't have that kind of player. And so I think Coach Diaz saw that. Shout out Cade Riddleson. I'm going to look it up, but I mean, he put the ball inside the 10. It seemed like all night long. And so a great punt, started them way back. They had no timeouts left. I think that was absolutely the right call, even though, in the heat of the moment, you're thinking, man, if we just get this 4th down, then ball game. But guess what? If we don't get the 4th down, they are definitely getting a field goal kick.
And you know what? Y'all are not going to believe me, but Scott can vouch for me, because here's where I was Nostradamus again. I was like, Scott, if we just hit Criswell, I was like, he will make a mistake. He will turn the ball over. And what happened?
He honestly, he called it. Now the Duke PTSD is real, like Brian said. But yeah, Jamie called it to the T. He said if we can hit him, he's going to make a mistake, and then boom, Stinson hit him. The ball went in the air, and then Trey Freeman happened to be just standing there, like, oh my, we win, and called it, and we won.
And then Coach Diaz got a chance to light up the victory cigar. Scott brought a prop earlier. I've got a prop now. He got a chance to light up the victory cigar. And by the way, once again, social media team, the smooth jazz in the background and the black and white video was incredible.
And now late nights with Manny Diaz. That's what it felt like.
All right. At Bleed In Duke Blue, I got Sam. Defense was outstanding. Offensive play calling leaves me wanting more consistency. Scored out of the 20s only once, and that game had 3 TD drives that started inside the Middle Tennessee State 20 due to a defense creating turnovers. What do we make of that? Any concern, especially with SMU and Miami coming up soon? Then I got a similar questions from Kevin Trapani. Why do we start so slow? Does it really need to take 3 quarters for our pace to get opponents' legs? I mean, I really don't have an answer but the offense does start slow. Brian might have something.
I mean, I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier. Oh, quickly how we have forgotten that first year with Mike Elko and that crew, where it either took a half to get going, or we would get going in the first half, and the second half it would just drop off dramatically. You got to understand and remember, they are 5 games into a different coaching staff and a different offensive and defensive scheme. And for this team to be 5-0, regardless of the opponents, is nothing short, I'll just say, a miracle. Now, if you ask the coaches that, no, we expect to be 5-0. But I'll just preface by saying this. Would you rather be going through these struggles as a fan base, seeing this team struggle in one half, but picking up in the second half and being 5-0? Or would you rather be going into a season expecting to be a playoff contender and your team is 1-4? You know who I'm talking about. Give me the struggles in 5-0, hopefully soon to be 6-0, anytime, any day of the week.
And once again, and by the way, Sam's great, dude. But it's a football game. Georgia and Alabama this past Saturday. Georgia did not show up. They're one of the top 5 teams in the country. And they didn't show up until later in the second half. If Duke met all these expectations that we're putting on them, I mean, think about it. Think about the expectations that Duke fans have on Malik. Think about the expectations that Duke fans have on the play calling. Think about the expectations Duke fans have on consistency. Well, daggone it, if we were that, we'd have won all 5 of these games by 35 plus points, and we'd be number 7 in the nation right now. But that's just not logical. So, I think it's just part of the ebbs and flows of football. And speaking of the offense, I mean, the Baltimore Ravens won that Super Bowl back in the day with the world's worst offense. And that defense absolutely took them to where they need to go. Alabama, there were some years where Alabama had elite quarterback play and some elite offensive play. I will give them that. They've always had elite running back play. But there were many of those Alabama teams that they hung their hat on the defensive side of the football. There's nothing wrong with that. And so at the end of the day, I think that Coach Diaz would say, if he was asked this question, we're trying to score more points than they do and win a football game. And if that means it's 19-16 or 39-36, we want to win football games. So, I mean, I am a little bit, I would love to see more consistency, of course. I'm also okay with winning football games.
Well, so this is also the same team that some people have made some money off of at 3.5 wins. So obviously they've proven some people wrong, and I don't care how you win. A W is a W at the end of the day. And when you have 5 and 0 losses, that says a whole lot about your team. It says a whole lot about the older guys. It says a whole lot about a lot of things. And at this point, I'm with you. I would love to see them go out and score 30 a game. Right now it's not happening. And some of it, I think, is Malik, first-year starter. Like Saturday, you could tell in the first drive, he was all over the place. And once he finally settled down, and again, once he made a nice pass, got going a little bit, the run game started working, then it started flowing. And again, that's where Duke did what they did best in the second half. And that's how they won the game at the end of the day.
All right. We actually do have a couple of Georgia Tech questions here. And I know Brian has some stats for us, so get to those here. Kurt Klein, how concerned are we that Duke is coming off a rivalry game win, going up against a team that was on a bye week? And we almost never beat them in their place to begin with. So this is a mountain to climb this week. And then we got a similar question from Grayson Lancaster. What will it take to shake the emotional high of beating Chapel Hill College and win on the road against a tough Georgia Tech team?
Do y'all want the corporate answer or the honest answer? I'm concerned about this game. Very concerned after doing some of my research. Georgia Tech is the most balanced team that this team has faced so far this season. Let me just run off some stats for you. They have the 40th ranked offense in the country, 32nd overall when it comes to passing yards a game, 276. Not concerned about that because Duke's passing defense is 18th in the country. That should be fun to watch. The law office of Haynes and Haynes, as they call it down in Georgia Tech. Here's where my concern is. We've seen the inconsistencies with the passing game with Duke. We have relied on the run game the last couple of games where we've needed it most. Georgia Tech, as a defense, is only allowing 90 yards of rushing a game. That is 18th in the country. So, where can you beat this Georgia Tech team? In the air. They have the 90th best passing defense in the country out of 133 schools. They give up close to 230 passing yards a game. So it's doable, but it's got to be a complete game from this Duke team on both sides of the ball. If they can get the running game going and it opens up the passing game, I'll feel more comfortable Saturday night. If that Tyler Santucci defense stops the run, I'm just being honest with you folks, it could be a very long night down in Atlanta. Duke going down to Georgia Tech is the equivalent of UNC going up to Charlottesville and playing Virginia. It seems that Duke never has success. I remember 2 years ago when Duke went down there, everyone expected it to be a cakewalk. Duke didn't show up. Mike Elko even admitted, we didn't show up until the very end.
The only player that showed up the whole time was Samir Hagens that game.
Exactly.
As a freshman. Yeah.
Exactly. So concern is there. But as you've seen with this team, the first 5 games, adjustments can be made. We'll see. We'll see.
And I'll say what I said in our group text earlier. I feel like Georgia Tech's, they've only played 2 good teams. And yes, I'm not including Florida State in that. Florida State was a good win at the time, but they're not a good team. We've seen that. And the 2 good teams that they have played, they lost to.
In the air.
Yeah.
Both teams, Syracuse and Louisville, had big passing days to win those games.
But I tell you what concerns me is Haynes King. He's almost at. We've texted with the guys here before. He's kind of Riley Leonard-esque. He's mobile.
Yes,
but he's completing like 73% of his passes. He doesn't throw. Well, I mean, he's got 1,200 yards on the year, completing 73% of his passes. He's only got 6 touchdowns in the air, but he's also got like 4 touchdowns on the ground. So he's a mobile guy, so that concerns me. But moving on, unless anybody has something else to say.
I mean, no, I just think the way football goes and just the way things happen. Watch Duke run the ball like crazy Saturday and struggle to pass. Like, you know what I mean? And isn't that wild how these kind of games go sometimes?
The whole NCAA season has been this way so far, and fans love it because you don't know what's going to happen. Those games you expect to be blowouts or a team's going to have it in hand, we've seen every week there is one or two games to where you just look at the score going, what happened there?
When you talk about, one of y'all referenced, I think it was Josh a minute ago, referenced Georgia and Alabama. The last 3 drives of that game were so much of a roller coaster ride where you're just like, oh my goodness. Guy makes a catch between 2 guys and then dances down the sideline. How the heck is that supposed to happen when you got 2 guys standing right there beside him? But that's just football, man. And that's why we love football. I mean, I love all sports, but football I think is my favorite because this year is the perfect example. Anybody can win any night in any game. And I think that is why it's so intriguing. That's why the country loves it. That's why College Game Day is one of the greatest shows of all time, except for when they fudged up this past weekend, except for old Nick and Pat, the step brothers, made the pick a Duke and the other fools didn't.
Football.
I'm gonna do 2 more and move on since we're going way long tonight. But that's okay.
Speaking of late nights with
Hey, it was a celebration episode. That's okay. It's okay. At TS Lester, he's like, it was great seeing everyone. He loved the new tailgate setup. We got to talk about that. There was a lot of space in that setup right there. I mean, just to be able to walk through the tents and stuff, and the trees were right there. There was so much shade.
Amen, brother.
It was just nice. And he was wondering, do you think Manny saying that we were going to see Henry Wrinkle was just to and not see it at all since was kind of like gamemanship for Manny, or would just kind of?
I think Coach Brewer kind of said it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. The opportunity wasn't there when they wanted to run it, I think, against UConn, if I remember right. And then again, he made sure that he let me know this afternoon that Malik is the guy, except for occasionally possibly thinking about something for Henry. But Saturday, it was going to be basically Malik and Malik only.
All right. Lane Phipps says, once again, the momentum in the building completely shifted after every time we touch was played. He said, sorry, Josh, I think that needs to stay. He said, should we move it to the beginning of the games or just keep what's working? No, and then he says, P.S. Thank you guys for the hospitality. So it was very nice to meet us. And yeah, we enjoy meeting you, Lane, and thanks for coming out. And I think we all still think we want every time we touch gone. Sorry.
Yeah, and nothing could have made me want it gone more than to watch Mike Krzyzewski out there on the field. And when they played it, I think the band played at that time or something. And like the other coaches started clapping, and Coach K started clapping, but he was way off beat, and so he tried like twice, and then he just stopped. He just stood there with his hands at his side. So, it is what it is. But hey, whatever floats your boat, there, Duke fans, do your thing.
All right, I got one more. Oh, there. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, you may be getting ready to reference what I was going to mention. For those of you that mentioned it, there is no way under God's little green earth that you will find the 4 of us singing that song. Just for the record. In honor of the man who passed away today, Mr. Dikembe Kumba. No, 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 no.
All right. I thought this one was a good one because there was a lot of confusion in the stands when this happened. At Drew Chesh, can someone explain the block punt resulting in Carolina getting the ball back? He said he heard various explanations of the rules around that.
So I'll tell you what Coach said today. Coach said that when you block a punt, once the ball goes over the line of scrimmage, it becomes a live ball. And whoever picks it, well, if it's touched by the receiving team over the line of scrimmage and the punting team gets the ball again, it becomes their ball. Basically, it becomes a live ball. And kind of like the guy behind us said the whole time, like the whole Leon Lett block field goal from back in the day. You just get away from the darn thing. Now, he mentioned that they tried to do something with the ball instead of just landing on it like you're supposed to. They tried to scoop and score. Had they just dove on it, it would have been Duke ball. And we may have had to wait till the fourth quarter to get the game in hand. We could probably had it in hand a couple minutes before. But, and to be honest with you, another thing, and he referenced this, and Steve Wiseman, shout out to him. He also asked the question about that bizarre punt that the guy was in the end zone for Duke, touched the ball and tipped it back out, and it became a live ball. I've never seen that in my life before, but it actually, they were supposed to stay around the guy, the returner. When they touched the ball and the three of them went in the end zone, it was just him by himself. And then it didn't help matters any that the Duke guy, whoever made the play, also pulled the face mask because you added 15 more yards to something that could have just been at the 25. So it was two bizarre plays that, you know, again, in this rivalry, bizarre things happen. And it just happened to be two of those weird things on punt plays that happened.
Well, and I will say, I mean, I would love to see the rule change in the punt of like if the punting team does recover the football and it's not past the first down marker, that they don't get possession. Sorry. Like you did not gain the yardage to get the first down. And I understand the technical change of possession there when we touched it, but like anyway, because they did not recover the ball past the first down marker when they did. So that I would love to see that rule changed.
It was like 1 yard over the line of scrimmage. It wasn't even more than a yard. So it was that part was even crazy.
Yeah. Is that it, Jamie? All right, man. You guys sent in some great questions, and we love nothing better than to just hate on Chapel Hill College. We do want to shout out those of you that are watching us on YouTube. You are some incredible people that comment, and so we want to thank you for that, for sure. We want to remind you to check out our website, DukeFootballTalk.com, Twitter X at DukeFBTalk. Same Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You can search Duke Football Talk. We've got actually a great Facebook family in there. So make sure you do that. And then if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure you give us a 5-star rating and review. I do have a new review this week. We'll read them every time we get them. This is from, I like this name, Bratwurst Supreme. So shout out to Bratwurst Supreme. The guys always give good and honest takes on our team, as well as preparing the audience for Duke's next opponent. I always enjoy the This Week in Duke Football segment, Scott. I love remembering those glimmers of sunshine in a mostly cloudy past. Thank you guys for picking up the torch of Duke football fandom and moving it from the Wild West of the Devil's Den message boards to the modern podcast era. Keep up the great work. Go Duke and GTHC. That's from Ski Hat Guy is how he signed off. And by the way, the Wild West of the message boards, those were the days. We do want to shout out our friends at the Devil's Den. They've done a good job of continuing that the good work over there. And shout out to Adam and John and those guys for sure.
Aren't you guys glad I relinquished the This Week in Blue Devil history to Scott, because I was just all negative.
Yeah,
this week Duke
lost 34-3 at Boston College. But no, I appreciate everybody sending in your questions, following us. Would you do us a favor? If you appreciate the content, would you pause it right now? Leave us a 5-star rating and review. Subscribe on YouTube. And then when you're finished, share the link. Share the link with a Duke fan. And we'd love to continue growing, our listener base. But speaking of This Week in Duke football history, it's that time again. And this is brought to you by, we don't have segment sponsors. But before we get there, Scott, pause. We do need to shout out our R&D sponsor. I forgot about that. Those are our friends at El Rodeo Mexican Restaurant on North Duke Street in Durham. They are your go-to restaurant for good quality Mexican food, good time, good drinks, good atmosphere. They are friends of the pod. They have a great setup for you. If you have a large party, they have a private room for you. make sure when you go to El Rodeo on North Duke Street that you let them know you listen to the Section 17 podcast. And just so you're aware, they announced it this week. There was an El Rodeo location over by Target, and that has actually been sold to another restaurant group. And so that is no longer going to be an El Rodeo. It's going to be now El Rodeo at North Duke Street is the sole El Rodeo in that franchise. And so make sure you hit them up. Let them know you listen to the Section 17 podcast. Maybe take a picture. A couple people have gone taking pictures. Send them to us. But anyway, thank you to our Iron D sponsor. And now, without further ado, Scott Medlin, This Week in Duke Football History. Take it away.
So for This Week in Duke Football History, we're going to go back to October the 6th, 2012. I'm pretty sure that was back when Jack Wallenbaugh was a second or third sophomore year. Duke dominated from the start to finish against Virginia, 42-17. Anthony Boone was 18 of 31 with 212 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 41 yards on the ground. Jawan Thompson, yes, the Super Bowl winning Denver Bronco, Jawan Thompson, led the Blue Devils with 71 yards rushing and a touchdown and 2 receptions for 12 yards and a TD. Connor Vernon had 7 receptions and 93 yards for 2 touchdowns. And the Jamison Crowder, who we all love and have referenced multiple times today, had 4 receptions for 84 yards and a TD. Walt Canty led the Blue Devils with 14 tackles, and Jordan Baez had 11 tackles for the Blue Devils. That win that season also made Duke bowl eligible and put them at 6-1 on the season, which, hey, there is not a bad time to be 6-1 and know you're bowl eligible in early October. So that was This Week in Duke Blue Devil history.
Jordan Baez, man, I have not thought about that name in a long time. That was a great one, Scott. Thank you for bringing that to us each and every week. Before we do the tell of the tape, Brian, I'm going off script here for just a second. If you're listening, you're just going to hear this. If you're watching, we're going to give you 17 seconds of our intro again. We just want to remind you that Duke won the victory bell. Yeah, Kendi. So it was good. It was good to hear Brian in the background. But just wanted to remind everybody, in case you've forgotten, that your boys in the dark blue in the black on Saturday night took care of them little Smurfs, them powder puffs. You know, them little Chapel Hill College midgets over there, and made them walk back. My favorite with a small deck. That's right. My favorite was watching Ramsey's having to take the walk all the way to the opposing locker room over there. So good. Anyway, Brian, enough about the past. We have to look forward to the future. We spoke about it. We're heading to Atlanta. You know, home of Chick-fil-A.
Amen.
Home of the varsity. Home of the College Football Hall of Fame. Home of the 1995 world champion Atlanta Braves. And then they won it again recently, but 95. You know.
It's the most memorable one.
For sure, for sure. Brian, give us the tell of the tape for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Take it away.
Absolutely, Josh. Tell of the tape for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Last year, Georgia Tech went 7-6 and made it to the Gasparilla Bowl, where they defeated Central Florida 30-17. Heading into this weekend, Georgia Tech is currently 3-2 and 1-2 in conference play. Georgia Tech was on the bye last week, and the last game they played was 2 weeks ago, where they were defeated by Louisville 31-19. Brent Key is in his second season as head coach and has a 14-12 coaching record. He has been with the program since 2019, and before coming to Atlanta, he had stints as an assistant coach at Alabama, Central Florida, and Western Carolina. Now, overall, this is the 91st matchup all-time between Duke and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech leading the series matchup on Duke 54-35 with one tie in the series. The first ever meeting between Duke and Georgia Tech was played on December 2nd, 1933 in Atlanta, where Georgia Tech defeated Duke 6-0. Since this inaugural game, the two teams had played against each other every year until last year. The last time Duke and Georgia Tech played was on October 25th, 2022, when the Yellow Jackets would defeat Duke in Atlanta 23-20 in overtime. We were talking about that earlier. Georgia Tech is currently on a 3-game winning streak against Duke, and this is the longest winning streak for the Yellow Jackets since they won 10 straight back in 2004 to 2013. Duke's last win in the series came on October 12, 2019, when Duke defeated Georgia Tech 41-23 in Durham. Now, Duke and Georgia Tech will continue their series in 2025 and 2026 before taking another year off in 2027. And head coach Manny Diaz, he's 1-1 all time against the Yellow Jackets. Of course, that was when he was the head coach at Miami. Now it's time for Did You Know? Georgia Tech students once engaged in a popular yet dangerous tradition that involved the theft of school property. Stealing the T was a tradition where students would remove the T off the tech sign near the top of the administration building on campus. The first known theft of the T occurred in 1969 when a secret group of frat brothers known as the Magnificent Seven scaled the building and stole the T. The group had been inspired by a similar prank the previous year at Harvard and wanted the theft to be a way to commemorate then-President Edwin Harrison retiring. The T would be returned days later, but a tradition had been sparked. In the years to follow, students would successfully steal the T on the east side of the building, which tradition dictated, and the offenders would return the letter either during halftime of the homecoming football game or directly to the president's lawn. Afterwards, the student body would celebrate the achievement after the game. While the school's administration turned a blind eye to the tradition for many years, the tradition itself was outlawed by the school in 1999 when a visitor tried to scale then Alexander Memorial Coliseum and passed away. Even with the change, though, there are still some students who attempt to steal the T to this day, with the last successful attempt occurring in 2014. Now, if any students are caught attempting to steal the T, they could face suspension or even expulsion from the school. And that was the tale of the tape for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Scott?
Or death.
Josh?
Or death.
Jamie? Yeah, or death, yeah.
I did not see that coming.
Yeah.
Was this the tea or spill the tea?
That T, yeah. Listen, yeah. Now, I will say this. The other one I was going to do had to do with a steam whistle on campus, like old Big Tudor at Kansas, but I didn't have enough information, so I had to go with stealing the tea.
I didn't see somebody dying coming.
You're muted, Josh.
Sorry, I have to show you. It literally just hit our Twitter DMs. I'm going to put it up here. It's from David Feely. This is a day after the game. GTHC all day, every day.
The guy's awesome.
Our guy. Yeah, man, it caught me and Jamie off guard when you said that the cat passed away. And so, anyway,
I mean,
what a punishment, man.
You get on top of a building. What do you expect? Yeah. I mean, sorry, I'm not trying to be morbid.
Call him Georgia Eck now, right? Without the T.
Yeah, and shout out to my buddy Andrew. He actually watched the game with us 2 years ago at Tobacco Road. Yeah. I asked him. He never got back to me, but I wonder if he ever tried to steal the T. Because that's a tall building. I look at Josh. You would be crying. You would be crying if you tried.
I'm done. I'm not doing heights like that. Guys, I've told you guys before, and if you're listening to this podcast, you don't know. My body or my mind tells me if I get up that high, my body will lose all of its control and it will just throw itself randomly over the rail. Like I will lose all bodily control. So
you would fall with the T.
Yeah, but hey,
I'm 99% sure I would be the second death.
To pass away.
Yeah, that would be yeah. I'm pretty sure I would. There's no chance I'd make it up there.
Your mind's telling you no, but your body's telling you yeah.
All right, it's time for our predictions. Actually, before we give our predictions, Brian, let us know who won last week on the UNC game.
So we actually had some close ones. I was very impressed with our fans with their predictions on X/Twitter, whatever you call it. Sid Royale at Royale_Sid. He predicted Duke to win 24-21, so pretty close there. On Facebook, Dan Thomas got Duke's score on the nose. He predicted Duke to win 21-17, another close score. And then on the INSA, former winner, y'all, it's past my bedtime. Ashton Dennis predicted Duke to win 26-17. Scott has already reached out to all three of y'all. Congratulations. We will not have one next week. Just a reminder, Duke plays the bye. You can't really give a prediction on Duke playing an inanimate object.
I mean, there have probably been years, speaking of pessimism, there's probably been years where we're like, yeah, we're going to lose to that. Whatever, whoever bye week is, we're losing to them for sure. No doubt. So anyway.
And we get them twice this year.
That's true. We got 2 bye weeks, which is great. That's the way the new scheduling works. So what are we looking at currently on our lines and over-under?
So apparently Vegas feels my concern. They have Duke as a 7.5-point underdog heading down to Atlanta this weekend, 8 o'clock on the ACC network. Over-under is 53.5 points. And fellas, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to give y'all some more information when it comes to the jerseys. I'll just give that as well as my prediction goes. So in the last 2 years that Duke and Georgia Tech have faced off in Atlanta, or the last 2 meetings, I should say, that being in 2022 and 2020, I said this in our group text. I'll tell you, folks, Georgia Tech is the Oregon of the ACC. They have so many different color combinations, so many different helmets, which I love, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to figure out what they will do, at which point Duke will counter that. In 2022, Georgia Tech went white, yellow, white, and then in 2020, they went yellow, blue, white. So take that for what you will. Duke countered with, oh, God, I hate this combo, black, white, black in 2022, and then icy white in 2020. So I'm going to start with the jersey. I have no idea. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to go a little different. I'm going to say that Duke is going to go with the white helmet with that big blue luscious D, white top, blue bottom. And then for the score, even though I'm concerned, this team has shown they play 4 quarters. Whether they're up, whether they're down, whether they're tied. They have all the momentum heading into this game. They are 5-0. Georgia Tech is coming off a loss. I understand it's a bye week, an extra week to prepare. If we've seen anything with this coaching staff, if we've seen anything with this team, they will go to the very last whistle. That's why I got to stick with my predictions. Duke's going to go 6-0. It's going to be a close one. I've got Duke winning 27-24 over the Yellow Jackets as they head into the bye week to get ready for Florida State in 2 weeks. Who's next?
I'll go next. And by the way, 7.5, I know is what you said. I think I've actually seen 8.5 and some
it's gone up and down.
Yeah, up and down. So Vegas definitely believes in Georgia Tech. And hey, listen, as we said, rightfully so. I mean, heading into the season, you guys know this. If you've been listening to the podcast all year, I absolutely said this was a loss for Duke, and I picked Georgia Tech to finish in the top 5 of the ACC, even with a very difficult schedule. And so, but we are 5-0. Uniform combo. I think Duke rides the hot hand. I think we stay icy white, and we stay Hellraiser. I think we repeat the MTSU combo because the Hellraisers are hot right now. You got to keep them going. So I'm going to go that. Everything about inside of me says Georgia Tech's going to win this game. So if and when they do, just understand that I called this weeks ago. But I'm going to go Duke. We're going to score some points, guys. Duke 34-30. 34-30. The Duke Blue Devils are going to win in Atlanta. I don't know how it's going to take place, but Malik Murphy is going to lead us down, and we're scoring the go-ahead touchdown, which ends up being the winning touchdown through the air. That's what I'm predicting.
Really quick, and I forgot to mention this. I got to speak with the equipment guys before the game. And they ribbed me a little bit. They're like, we know you don't like the jersey combo for the UNC game. So we got to remember, the last time the white Hellraiser was worn before Middle Tennessee was a loss, they overcame that. The last time the black Hellraiser was worn against UNC, they lost. They overcame that. All I'm saying is there's a certain someone that needs to come back from years past, from 2016, and break that curse. I'm talking about the blue Hellraiser Maybe we see it this year. Just throwing that out there. You never know. Sorry, Scott, Jamie, who wants to go next?
All right, I'll go ahead and go. So look, the Devils are going down to Georgia looking for a W to steal. They don't need to get behind because we don't need that anymore. So let's shout out to Charlie Daniels there. You know what? I'm gonna play the game and have fun with it. I'm gonna go with the blue Hellraiser, but icy whites from there on because I really, that's beautiful, and that looks really good on a Saturday night. ACC Network got the A crew there, got West Durham himself, and Lugs. And shout out to Graham Barton, who should go down to Atlanta Thursday night and get a big win on TNF. Go Bucks. So anyway, as far as the Saturday game, man, I know, Jamie, sorry. Okay, go Graham. How about that? Does that work better for you? Go Graham, and then go Bucks. So, score. Now, see, there's where we're having this. There's where I always have the fun part with it. I would love to see get the over/under. I don't know if a lot of points are going to be scored. Obviously, Duke is stuck with this 26 type thing. And, I'm going to go out on a limb here and just have a little fun. I'm going to say 28-27. And you talk about having a long evening and some stomach issues at the very end. That will definitely happen. And a little puckering.
What, are you eating spicy food or what?
Dude, I feel like Brian was talking about earlier when he was talking about his, just not feeling right about the situation. I don't ever feel right about any Duke game until we get to the very end of it. That's me. I don't know if it's the pessimist in me or just the fandom or the PTSD. I don't know. But just knowing how I am for a big game, and to me, this is a big game. We're talking about Duke, who was not supposed to make a bowl game, was not supposed to win more than 3.5 games, was not supposed to do this, was not supposed to do that. And this is a chance, first week in October, to go ahead and get the final W to go ahead and be bowl eligible before most teams in the country and possibly go eat some frosty Pop-Tarts like Brian wants to in December, January, whenever it happens. But anyway, I'm going to go 28-27. I hope we don't live that dangerously. I'd really love to see Duke win by more than, 3 points. But we'll go 28-27. We'll see what the heck happens.
All right. Like Brian said, I don't know what to think about the uniform combos. Georgia Tech could do a number of things, but I'll go icy whites as well. And I think this is different from what Josh said. I think I'll go Gothic Duke helmet. So not that we have to be different, but I figured I'd throw that out there. And called this a loss on my predictions as well. I had us going 5-0, and then potentially losing to Georgia Tech. And you know what? Y'all don't at me. Don't at me. I'm gonna stick with it. Georgia Tech 27, Duke 21.
It's respectable. You got to stick to your guns, and it'd be one thing if this team was coming in completely different than what we thought preseason. So stick to your guns. That's respect.
Yep. For sure.
Can't be mad about it.
Well, guys, it's been a great episode. I mean, we've celebrated for a little bit too long, but we celebrated the Victory Bell returning to Durham. Shout out to the media team who, while we were recording this podcast, and we've not even been able to watch it yet, from what we can see online, has put together an incredible recap of the Bell coming home. Shout out to Manny Diaz. Shout out to the seniors, to the fifth-year guys. Shout out to the Nikki Dalmallins of the world, the Trey Freemans, the Jalen Stinsons, the Jordan Moores. Like, shout out to those that have paid their dues, John Tavis Robertsons, guys who have been here for several years and not gotten the Victory Bell. And so, man, I could not be happier for those guys, could not be happier for their families, could not be happier for Coach Diaz and the entire staff. And listen, I feel like for the next couple of weeks, we're playing with house money. Let's just go win them. How about that? We might as well. Let's have some fun. See Duke win a couple more games. But Brian, guys, if we're missing anything, are we ready to sign it off?
Yeah, one more thing,
Oh, yeah,
and
go ahead.
obviously this past weekend there was a lot of devastation that came through with Hurricane Helene. We're just thinking about everyone on the western part of the state, as well as down in Florida, Georgia, everyone that was affected. I don't know if you saw our post, but the UNC team transport for all the equipment, all the staff, everything that goes to away games, they are loading that up and they are sending it out west to help those in need. For those of you who might have been living under a rock this past weekend, this has been a once in a lifetime storm, very devastating. Whole cities had been taken out by this hurricane. Places that all four of us have been to before completely wiped out. We've got a buddy of ours that is in that area. Thankfully, he and his family are okay. But from what he has told us, they're locked, like they're landlocked as far as like roads being taken out. They can't get out. Helicopter drops almost by the hour of supplies. He's had folks that he doesn't even know reaching out to him because they know he's a pastor, begging him to look for friends and family that have not been able to reach them. So, it's only what you see on Twitter, X, the news is only a fraction of what these folks are going through. So if you have any means to donate, any dry goods, any water, anything, every little bit helps. But we'll repost that. Duke has got something up as well, to where if you donate a certain amount, that they give you a code or something off towards future tickets. But just remember, when you're donating, it's about those in need. If the roles were reversed and you were in need, you would hope that someone would be there to help you out in your time of need. So while we joke and we laugh and we have a good time and we talk about winning the bell back from UNC, this is one instance to where sports is definitely below this situation. We all come together as humans, and just whatever you can do to help out the best way you can.
And let me give a quick update, since I'm kind of actually the feet on the ground here when we're talking about the Carolina trailer and stuff. And shout out to the folks who are taking care of that. Right now it's about humanity. It's not about a team name or a team school or anything like that. So shout out to that happening. In the morning, 3 trailers will be leaving Durham, heading that way, and they've got a contact through Red Cross and through a senator that we know well. We're still going to be taking donations. So if you're in the Durham area and you cannot make it over to campus for any reason, because they'll be taking donations at the ticket office. We're also going to be taking donations over at 4430 Hillsborough Road at Lee's Towing. If you can't make it over there, we'll be out there from today through tomorrow through Saturday, starting around 7 a.m. till about 5 p.m. every day. The trailers that are leaving are going to unload the best they can. They're going to come right back. We're going to be loading up Penske trucks and things like that to get them ready for when the trailers get back to reload. So if you missed out today, because there was a great number of folks, and thank you to all those who gave, and thank you for all those that shared. And if you still want to share, we'll mention something else again, and I'm sure we'll be posting more things on our Facebook page and Twitter and things like that and Instagram. But again, thank y'all for all you've done. Thank you for caring. Again, we know some folks also who have not been able to find some family members. And that's, like Coach Diaz said today, when you don't have that lifeline, when you can't talk to the person, that's a feeling no one wants. So just shout out to everybody trying to do the best they can for the folks out west. You're in our thoughts, you're in our prayers. And I know a handful of kids at our church that go to App State. They were able to get home the day before, and that's a great thing. But there are still some people out there who we don't know where they are. So just pray for those folks, and thank you. That's all I can say. Really, thank you for all the folks that have come out and given. We really appreciate it.
Well, I think that is the perfect stopping point for this episode. We did go a little bit longer, but hey, we had to celebrate the first time in 5 years that the Victory Bell is back in Durham. And don't forget, 8 o'clock Saturday night, ACC Network. If you can't make it to Atlanta, tune those eyes in to the ACC Network and cheer the boys through to hopefully go 6-0. But for Josh Cox, Scott Medlin, Jamie Holt, and producer Tyler Witt, I'm Brian Kennedy, and this has been another episode of the Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast.